roughly 6:30 p.m. We will call to order the Forest Lake Airport Commission meeting for Wednesday, March 16th. Mr. Schmidt, would you please take the roll?
Yes, Mr. Hustick. Here. Mr. Lynch. Here. Mr. Bunsen. Here. John Schmidt is here. Mr. Steeler.
Yes, present.
All present, thank you.
Okay. We need to, are there any additions or corrections to the previous minutes?
I will make a motion that we approve the minutes as written. I've looked them over and they look correct.
Commissioner Lynch makes a motion to approve the minutes.
And I'll second.
And Councilman Husnick seconds. Is there any other discussion on the minutes? No? If all in favor, aye.
Aye.
They pass unanimously. They are approved. And we will move on to Bolton and Mink's report from Silas Palmer.
Thanks, Mr. Steeler. So kind of the first item of business is kind of the master plan and airport layout plan. So we submitted the the airport layout plan to MnDOT on January 5th of 2021. We received comments back from MnDOT on July 19th of 2021. We addressed the comments, resubmitted the revised ALP on August 12th, 2021, and we're still waiting on the final approval. I followed up with Kevin Carlson, he's the MnDOT planner, reviewing the project, and he keeps just saying, it's on my list, I'll get to it. So I'll follow up with them again tomorrow and see if we can get final approval on the ALP. So that's kind of where that project kind of stands.
At least we still have our foot in the door. That's the important thing.
Well, I mean, for your guys' reference, so MnDOT got inundated with paperwork as part of all this federal funding that was appropriated for the last 2 years. Unfortunate for Forest Lake, not being a federal airport, they didn't take advantage of any of that funding, but apparently the way it works in Minnesota is MnDOT has to administer those funds for airports, which is added to their workload. So unfortunately, they've had a rough 2 years of being responsive as well, because I know Mr. Undham's reached out to them on numerous occasions to no avail as well. So no excuse, but that's kind of what's happening on their side.
That's great.
Kind of onto the capital improvement program. I know we touched about this at the last meeting in 2021. So I believe it was August or September. So Mike Hartel, he's kind of the NAVAIDS group leader there at MnDOT Aeronautics, and Tim Jarvis, they came out to the airport and met with Mr. Undham and I, primarily to take a look at, the CIP and some of the projects that we had identified on there, because Mr. Undham has been constantly putting a bug in MnDOT's ear saying, hey, now that we've got an approved ALP, we have a realistic CIP, we have a number of pilots wanting to base their hangar at Forest Lake, but we just need funding to see some of these projects together. So if you recall, a focus from this airport commission for, the past 2 funding cycles was try to get funding for the south taxi lanes, kind of add 2 additional taxi lanes on the south end there, extend water and sanitary so you can construct, up to 11 new hangars. Well, unbeknownst to, anybody with Forest Lake, MnDOT requires a minimum of 3 tie downs in hard pavement, not the 6 that Forest Lake has in grass. So part of that meeting was to let Mr. Undham know that on kind of your annual 50-10 inspection, MnDOT's going to put on there what we'd like to see, tie downs and hard surface. So we pulled out the ALP and we showed them that, on the last layout, it's on the plan to ultimately pave an apron there to allow, the number of aircrafts here in hard surface, but also what Forest Lake is trying to do is extend some taxi lanes so we can actually build more hangars, because my belief now is there's only 1 lot still remaining open, but it's leased out.
All were fully leased out.
So they're all leased out. So as part of that meeting, what MnDOT recommended we do for state fiscal year 23, so that starts July 1st of 2022, is prioritize the CIP expanding the apron, and then instead of looking at constructing the south taxi lanes, they recommended constructing the taxi lane Bravo. So where that Chris Olson hangar is, extend that taxi lane, essentially, going north. I can't remember the exact footage of it, but doing it that way kind of opens you up to construct 5 hangars in that location, with which, water and sewer is a little bit easier to connect to because of the extensions that were made for the Chris Olson hangar. So that was a recommendation from MnDOT, and then similarly, if you're gonna expand the taxi lane Bravo kind of to the north, you're essentially creating a bottleneck where there's only one taxi lane for if you're in the South Hangar area. You have to go all the way across the fuel and then taxi, to the parallel taxiway. They recommended kind of constructing what's called taxiway A3. So everyone in the South Hangar area, if you don't need to fuel, you can just directly go and access the 31 end. So that way it kind of alleviates some of the congestion with the number of aircraft that are based here. So those three projects, and then also kind of just annual crack repair, are proposed on the CIP for 2023. And then the project that MnDOT did have funding for in 2022 is kind of the infield drainage improvements. So kind of just north of taxiway A2 and south of the Pappies, if you guys recall, when the previous engineers designed the runway, that area was designed as kind of an infiltration basin. So it's got a flat bottom where the idea is that drainage will infiltrate, but unfortunately, with kind of the clay soils that are here where the airport are, that area is just consistently wet. I believe Public Works mows it, 2 or 3 times a year. But what we're trying to do is avoid that becoming a wetland, because as soon as, DNR or Rice Creek Watershed District says, hey, that's a wetland, well, then you can't touch it at all, and it kind of creates some more issues. So before I kind of jump to that infield drainage project, I kind of wanted to just flip to the CIP so the commission here can kind of see that 4 projects are proposed for 2023, and if you're kind of wondering why that South Taxi Lane pavement construction was kind of moved down the list, that was the recommendation from MnDOT, just because of the cost for that project, and then, knowing that the utility extensions were going to be a stretch for them.
Taxi lane Bravo would be extended, but those are considered to be commercial hangars, and those lots are bigger than the ones that would be on the south end, is that correct?
So just because it's shown on the layout and on the airport layout plan as 80 by 80 lots, it doesn't obligate the commission that it has to be an 80 by 80 lot. The other lots there are 60 by 60, but I believe the max build size is a 50-foot wide hangar. Is that, I believe that's how the existing lots are set up. But to answer your question, Mr. Schmidt, just because it shows on paper here 80 by 80, the commission can divvy up those lots how you see fit.
But it's still considered to be commercial according to our plan, the ones that are facing.
Well, not necessarily. That would have to be, we'd have to extend the public parking too.
Yeah, that's correct. Same as the
Okay.
Yeah. What they would deem as a commercial has to have an access point that's not coming in from taxiway. So either a parking lot or road access, they would classify that as the commercial area.
So, okay.
That kind of ends it there. I mean, you'd have to extend that parking area to do the same thing. So, but I mean, I'm not saying it can't happen, but as of right now, you'd have a tough time.
Okay.
Yeah, the ALP does show kind of an extension of the parking lot and the access road to kind of go to the east side of this proposed development there. But the thought process from MnDOT there was, okay, well, if you construct that taxi lane, it opens up 5 hangars in an area where site development is going to be a little simpler, and then extending utilities is going to be a lot simpler. So, but Mr. Schmidt is accurate. Like, the idea there during the planning study was keep those spots for, business, corporate type hangars. But there's also, 5 lots there that's, if somebody's building an 80 by 80, it's very likely they may be doing some sort of aviation related business or have multiple aircraft that they're maybe like leasing space out. So it provides, the commission and the city options if that project gets greenlit, if you want to proceed with extending the taxi lane.
So the south taxi lanes then wouldn't get constructed until?
It's pushed back on the CIP to 2027, and that's just sheerly for cost reasons, because if the commission wanted to just construct the taxi lanes, that's something that's doable with MnDOT funding. But to get the water main and sanitary utilities extended there, that's where it becomes a higher cost project that, MnDOT just doesn't have funds to do that. And when you look at splitting that project up to do either utilities 1 year and then the pavement construction the next, it's still difficult because it makes the most sense cost efficiency wise to do it all together. But that was kind of the comment from MnDOT as well. Extend taxi lane Bravo. If those 5 hangar lots are leased out and built out in a couple of year time, well, then you're gonna be ready to construct to the south, and then we can understand the need.
And to build off what Sally said, during that meeting, they also recommended holding on that south expansion, just because they wanted to make sure that we got our infrastructure from the taxiway and one-way access points, so there's multiple access points. They didn't want to have that bottleneck there, add more traffic into that. They wanted, from a safety standpoint, having multiple accesses to the taxi lanes prior to doing additional expansion out there. So this CIP does align with the way MnDOT likes to see the airport grow. So we make sure that MnDOT's on the same page as us, which I think gives us the best shot at getting projects greenlit, because they've already said, yes, we'd like to see them sequenced this way, versus us kind of playing. And I commented to this during that meeting. I said, we've been kind of guessing what you guys are gonna fund. You know, we've asked for meetings to try to prioritize these things. This is the first one we had. So I wanna make sure we put projects in that you have they have a good chance of getting greenlit. And I also confirmed that if they do greenlit these projects, we do have the local match available. Because they said that's the other concern they have at some of these airports, to put a project in, and then the local share might not be there. And I confirmed, I said, if you know, for example, if that apron expansion comes out and they have extra funding this year, we have the funding to do the local match at the current match rates. I said, if you have the funding, let me know, we'll get that authorized, get that done. So we're in a good position if they have extra funding to get that additional project in. But I don't know where they're gonna be at the end of this fiscal year for extra funding.
Any other kind of questions or comments on the CIP? All right, and then kind of the last page in kind of the update memo is kind of the Infield Drainage Improvements Project. So we've been talking about this project, you know, I think ever since the runway and tags were constructed, is, you know, a number of the commission members and pilots operating there have kind of expressed some concern about that infield area. So what you see kind of a plan sheet with the design that's proposed for that area is essentially, you know, extending 2 lines of drain tile throughout that entire area to not only, you know, collect subsurface drainage that's keeping the area wet, but also try to catch some of the surface drainage that's coming, just because there is a culvert that runs under taxiway A2 that's outlets into this area. The initial design for this, like I mentioned, was just a flat basin with kind of a 922.5 elevation, where infiltration was the initial design intent, but that just hasn't been successful. So to try to alleviate, you know, future drainage concerns in a wetland coming in, the proposed project is going to extend the drain tile. Though the one thing we're waiting for on that project is now MnDOT is going to revise their state statutes in regards to grants. So before, you know, the city could do the design, bid the project out, and then submit a grant application and get reimbursed for the funds. Well, there's a new statute that MnDOT says, well, they have to encumber funds before any work can be done. So we're holding off on kind of bidding the project until MnDOT says, you know, funds for the project have been encumbered. Working with Mr. Undon, we got that letter submitted to MnDOT yesterday. So if we hear back, you know, anytime in the next week or two, we'll finalize the bidding schedule so we can get that one out on the streets, and, you know, I'm hopeful constructed during the summertime. But the estimated cost is now, you know, $179,000 total, and that includes design and design and construction costs for it. But I wanted to at least present the commission with the proposed plans so you guys can see what's being proposed to improve the drainage there.
So does that change the elevation of that lower area there at all?
No, it's gonna remain the 922.5, just installing drain tile there to connect to the existing tile network that's on the north side of the Pappies, that ultimately outlets underneath the 31N and then through the drainage network. I believe it all falls eventually into Clear Lake.
What size drain tile is that?
6 inch.
Okay.
Yep, so we're proposing, so the existing tile is 6, we're proposing 6 inches. But as you can see, you know, we're putting in a number of kind of cleanouts there to kind of capture some surface drainage as well. And then also so the city can flush the tile out and make sure, you know, we don't have any clogs or anything of that nature.
That was the next thing. What kind of maintenance does that take?
Just flushing water. You know, these cleanouts are set up where you just pull the top off, and, you know, if you bring a water truck out there, you can just dump water down there, because water just running through a pipe is going to have sufficient head where it's going to just work its way down. So that's the best way to keep these clean. And they're wrapped in an aggregate-based trench, so you know, the idea is they don't get clogged with, you know, dirt and things of that nature, just by the nature of construction. So but that's just how to make sure that they remain in good condition. So if there weren't any other questions on that project, be happy to answer any other the commission may have.
Well, that should alleviate the water problem. I know that there's always been some concern about that being kind of steep and deep in there, but that's not gonna change, so.
I was thinking the same thing, it's been a concern that it's steep and deep, and if it would change the level, but it's not gonna change the level, it won't change the steepness or the deepness.
Yeah, unfortunately, what this project is just going to do is improve the drainage of it. So the reason why that basin was designed was Rice Creek Watershed District, as part of that project, required, you know, on-site infiltration of so much of the acreage of land. Because just to the east of Taxi Lane Alpha, there's a wetland there. So some of the preliminary design plans that I had saw showed a culvert going underneath the taxiway to then ultimately outfall into that wetland, and Rice Creek Watershed District would not allow that. So that's where this design came about. So we're kind of limited in terms of what we can do to make improvements, and tile is about the only option we have.
It's just a step forward, so we don't have ducks in there and geese and everything else, so.
Yep, that's the idea. You won't need the decoys, I hope, anymore.
$179,000, there's no state funding involved in that.
There is. So that project is funded 95% state, 5% local. So
Okay, there.
our initial estimate, like on the CIP, that's the 2022 project. The initial estimate we had was 192,260. So at that point, the local share was projected to be 9613. But now it'll be, you know, 5% of the 180,000 is what our estimate is. But we'll obviously know when we bid it out.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that. You have it right in the front page. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I don't have any, Travis, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate the information.
All right, next on the agenda is the 2023 and 24 lease rate adjustment. And do you wanna?
Members of the Airport Commission, I just noticed in my staff report I have 2022, 2023 readjustment, that should be 23 and 24. I was back here on my memo line there, so just forgive the error there. But looking at lease rate adjustments for 23 and 24, if you recall back in 2018, we went through quite a bit of back and forth of what is the metric that we're going to use to adjust lease rates. At that point, it was determined to use CPIU from Minneapolis-St. Paul as the rate that will be used to adjust leases moving forward. In 2020, we did use that rate. It came back to a 3% increase in 20. Looking back at the last year, the previous year's CPIU for Minneapolis-St. Paul, it did come in a lot higher than 3%, 7.2%. So using that 7.2%, the lease rates have been adjusted, and what's being proposed is 11.4 cents for non-commercial and 17.2 cents for commercial leases. From a process standpoint, what the Airport Commission is being asked tonight is to make a recommendation that yes, this is the lease rates that we're proposing for 23 and 24. That then goes to council, who will make the adjustment, will make the formal motion to approve the lease rate adjustments, and then those get memorialized in the fee schedule and will be reflected on the next year, so on 23's lease payments, which will be coming out here in, I believe those get released in June. Those invoices will get sent.
Yeah, that's the one so it's payable in June or by the end of June.
Yeah, because our lease years run they're one of the ones that run July to July and not January to January. So we get bill out mid-year on these ones. So we always do the lease rate adjustments in February or March of the year. They take effect and then they get billed out for the following 2 years. So we're still on the 20 lease rate adjustment was for 21 and 22. Those have been billed out. Now we're looking at doing 23 and 24 on the 7.2%.
And I had, was just curious on that, because because I know all the data is based on the January, year over year, and I just wanted to confirm that when we talked about it in 2018, our last adjustment was the January to January.
That is correct. I did confirm that as well. I wanted to make sure I was taking the same look back period, the same 12 months, and I went back in 18 and 20 and did January to January, so that's what we're using for the CPIU.
See, last time we adjusted, it said actually went down a little bit.
Yeah, I know the inflation rate
Yeah.
really been really low until just recently. So I take it at this point, we need to make a motion to the city council that we, move forward with
Yeah, I'd be
this.
looking for a recommendation that the airport commission is comfortable with this lease rate adjustment, and I'll take the exact same memo, change it up, I'll make sure I have the correct years on the memo line, present the council at the next meeting for consideration at the next council meeting.
So move.
Do you want to make an official motion to recommend to the city council?
Here it is, the airport guide. I recommend that we increase the 2022 to 2023 annual rental rates for leased land at Forest Lake Airport by 7.2%. Based on the previous year's CPIU, the new lease rates would be 11.4 cents per square foot for non-commercial and 17.2 cents square foot for commercial.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Councilman Husnick seconds. Is there any other discussion on this item before we vote to send it to city council? No discussion, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay? Did
you say nay?
I did not say
Okay.
aye, but I didn't think I heard everybody say aye, so I just want to make sure. It's unanimous that we move this on to the, forward to the city, forward the motion to the city council. Okay. Next on our agenda is the update on the Pappies and the repair.
Members of the airport commission, if you remember back in November, there was some questions on if the Pappies were functional out at the airport or not. I had been in contact, I believe it was Casey, Casey Carlson, who's MnDOT's lighting expert. Been back and forth with him. He's been at the airport multiple times, taking a look at the Pappies to see if we can get them functioning. It turns out at first he went out there and found a fried control board. I ordered a new control board, he installed that, they still didn't work. He digs a little bit deeper in there, finds a wire, set of, I can't remember what type of wires or whatever they were, those are fried out. Ordered a new one of those got installed and still didn't work. There's some fuses now that he thinks that's probably the last piece. So he's been doing some troubleshooting back. Those are ordered, they're in at the airport right now. Next time he's in the area, he will go out there and install those. As part of this maintenance on there, he's been working with Dave Adams to get Dave's crew trained in how to make sure once they're functioning, that they go through the proper maintenance to make sure that they're adjusted properly, because there is a maintenance requirement that they have to go out there and check the angles of it to make sure that they are functioning properly. Dave is going to get training on those for his crew, so once they're operational, we'll make sure that we're going through those proper maintenance checks on a monthly basis to make sure they're operational. But just wanted the airport commission to know that we are working, or actually MnDOT's working on getting the Pappies repaired out there. It's been sort of, this is the last part I need. Oh, by the way, I need one more of these. So I'm becoming very good friends with the parts dealer out in New York who sells all sorts of parts for Pappies.
Why is it wrong in the first place?
Why is it?
Why, are we just, things just burn out,
Things
things just wear out at this rate, or was it installed improperly, or is it too much water in there?
He hasn't mentioned anything to me that it's outside normal maintenance. I mean, he hasn't said anything like, "Whoa, there's a big issue here." He was out there. He just kind of was like, "These boards do go out. The wires do, will wear out weather-wise. The fuses, which are fusible links or whatever." He was some part I've never seen before. They're all just sort of, and I will give him a lot of credit. He's been extremely accommodating, coming out there and doing basically the labor for free on it and saying, "We'll get you back up and running." I just don't have a definitive date as to when we'll be up and running yet, because I'm on his schedule a little bit for that. But we're continuing to troubleshoot, and we are closer to getting those back up and running.
Okay. Next on the agenda, maintenance and operations grant update.
I wanted to give the airport commission just an update on the maintenance and operations grant. Just so everybody's aware, the city gets, or the airport gets reimbursed for maintenance activities out at the airport. MnDOT is one of the few Minnesota is one of the few states that does not reimburse for maintenance operations at the airport. Our last grant cycle for our maintenance and operations, we ended up leaving a little bit of money on the table because we didn't have expenses to match out what we were awarded for the grant opportunity. Well, I reached out to MnDOT for 22-23 budget year. They are allowing airports to take a portion of the maintenance and operations grant money and apply it to a capital project. It's kind of a one-time gift that they said, if you want to take maintenance money and apply it to a capital project, you're able to do that. It just reduces how much you would qualify for from a maintenance standpoint. So in essence, by reducing the amount that we have, we are guaranteeing not to leave money on the table, which is something that I don't like leaving. If I can get grant money, I want to make sure I maximize my grant money. So I did have a conversation with Dan Berner, and I asked him, can we reduce our maintenance and operation grant by the amount that we owe for the fuel pump? So the $7,000 that we had to come up for the local share for the fuel pump, can I get reimbursed from MnDOT so that fuel pump will be 100% covered by grant funds? They are agreeing to let us do that, so they're going to write the grant agreement, which will reduce our maintenance and operation grant by $7,000, and then we can, I believe it's $11,000 worth of maintenance and operation expenses, we'll still be able to submit for. So at the end of the day, when I looked at that number, I don't think it's going to cost the airport any money. I don't think our maintenance expenses are going to be astronomically higher this year, kind of looking at where we're at from a maintenance standpoint. But we are going to basically, once this grant agreement comes in, and I've been asking for this for about 3 or 4 months now, and I'm still waiting to get the actual paperwork on it. What it does allow us to do is the fuel pump will be 100% funded by grant dollars, so we have no local share there. The only risk that we have is that if for some reason our maintenance expenses are a little bit higher, we have to make that difference up. But we're not going to leave money on the table this year, which is what I was trying to avoid happening. So good news is that the fuel pump will be funded. Downside is that we potentially may have to pay a little bit more for maintenance on a local share, but I don't anticipate that being a huge issue for the airport's budget.
All right, we don't have any guests here today. Did you have something else?
Well, it's just the fact that we're paying Peter to pay Paul or something like that, it always gets lost in the interpretation, that's the thing I worry about.
And the hard thing about this, when I was asked to make the assumption, I didn't know what my funding level was gonna be, and they were basically saying, make a guess, do you want to take money and put it to a capital project? And I'm like, I don't have any approved capital projects, I don't know what it was basically really a shot in the dark, and I finally said, I want to take my local share, gave me a number, they agreed to it, so it's.
One way or the other, one way or the other, having the pumps paid, that's.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so that's about all I had on that, so, but because it used to be right around, it was always around $18,000 total.
Correct, yeah, it's always been there, and historically, the last few years with it being drier, and Dave's, the way he's redone it with the new mower out there, mowing costs have come way down, so our ongoing maintenance expenses are lower, which is one of the reasons I wanted to make sure that if they're gonna give us $18,000, that we get the $18,000 one way or the other. Right.
On that gas pump, does it still print out City of Forest Lake on the receipts?
I just put the receipt in my pocket.
But I mean, it shows up on your account.
I'm looking at that, I actually just gave the account, we have a new finance team in there, I just gave them all the account information on that, and they're looking into that as we speak. And just, as long as we're on the fuel pricing, or the fuel pump, we are gonna see a price increase coming up out there. We've been trying to keep the price lower as much as we can, but we just had to order fuel, and this last bump, just like everything else, fuel went up, so we are gonna see a price adjustment out there.
How much,
I don't know yet. I know Dave was saying he ordered and was able to piggyback a load so our delivery fees are less, but the per gallon cost is a lot higher than it was last time he ordered, so there's gonna be a jump in fuel price about
It's
this.
gonna hurt general aviation, there's no question about that.
All right, anything else from any of the, Mark?
I'd like to just discuss something, there was banter out there about snow removal. And at one point in time, there was a snowbank that somebody was unable to get their low-wing aircraft around. I remember I emailed Dan, and both workers went out there to push the banks back. The last time they didn't push it back, I mean, they pushed it way back, so they gave ample room. And then the conversation kind of turned from, okay, that's good now, but now we've got people just moving snow from their aprons to the sides, and then they still have a significant pile at the end that might not be be suitable for a low wing aircraft. Is there any, again, I'm new, is there any guidance that we give the leaseholders on how they can remove the snow, where they should put the snow? Or is it just,
One of the ways we could help cure that is the fact that one year I hired a snowblower to go around there and just cut another swath and throw it in between or whatever it took, you know? And that's really all it would take from the city's point of view too. If they took the snowblower out there when it got that bad and cut those banks down back another 6 feet on either side of the taxiway, and it would, they don't take it all the way to the grass even. So
Right.
just,
I've got a low wing, I've had to go out with my shovel and
and everybody.
cut them down
Yeah.
so I can get out.
But that really answered the whole issue, so the snowblower really is the key there. So,
And from what I've gathered in talking to Dave, is that if there are issues out there, let me know, I can relay those on, or speak with Dave, and his crew is willing to go out there. I know they did a ride around with one of the pilots out there and kind of said, here's what we want our snow removal to be, and they've been able to match that, so they're willing to learn. We just wanna know if there is an issue like that, you know, between the hangar and the end of the aprons. If there is an issue that needs to be resolved, just let us know about it, we're happy to send a crew out.
but there's no formal snow removal guidance that, okay. I thought at one point in time, somebody was saying that, like, Anoka's got, more formal, where they actually take everybody's apron and clear it off, and they leave about 12 inches from your airplane, the door from the airplane. But I'm not in favor of having Dave drive over my lawn,
Right.
because there's some guys out there that do better than others as far as the lawn is concerned. So I guess we don't need a formal, we just, if we see an issue, we just let you know, Dan.
Yep, just let me know, I'm happy to relay it on Public Works, I know they've been really responsive of getting out there and addressing those issues.
I mean, they should have had more snow too, I mean, years past, it wasn't an issue, because we didn't have that much snow. So.
a couple of years ago, it was a big issue for a while,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah, and there's only, there's a lot of high wings, there's not all that many low wings. So,
yeah, you were low wing guys.
I know. It sucks having to go out there and shovel down the top 2 feet of the snow drift.
We saw bird wings at the bottom anyways.
All right, there's no other items, does somebody move to adjourn?
Mr. London, we got
Oh,
items here.
we have items.
Yeah,
Trust me.
Yeah, this is a rant, a bit of a rant, okay? A couple of months ago in the Peach paper, they had an article in about pollution that was happening in Clear Lake.
Yes, yes, they mentioned, somebody mentioned here.
And first of all, why Clear Lake and not Forest Lake and all this other stuff? And this has been going on from, it's a 3M thing. I can't remember, but it's some chemical that they found traces of it in the fish or whatever the case may be. Fine. But at the very end of that article, quote, the airport might be a problem. I don't have the article in front of me. This is exactly the garbage reporting that this country's been putting up with for years. Just plant the seed that there's an issue. Okay, so then I complained to the head of one of the people at the watershed district about it, Don Waller, as a matter of fact, and he said, oh no, he called me back about a week later. He said, no, I've been to these meetings and things. It has nothing to do with the airport, absolutely nothing. But the point is, somebody planted the seed, and it's, as far as I'm concerned, garbage reporting. And to even come up with that is
I called the reporter.
did you?
I called the reporter and on the same article, and I said, how do you know that?
Did
Everybody says that. Well, now, wait a minute.
What it means is that somebody who doesn't really care for the airport
Correct,
has her ear.
correct.
And so.
Somebody said.
To report this garbage is beyond belief. But anyways, that's the end of my rant.
All right,
And I'm gonna keep it up until we get it straightened out.
thank you.
And
I was not happy with that reporting. I have an issue, Mr. Steeler. The airport sign fell down,
Yes.
and I picked it up, and I put it in my hangar, and I have a plan to remount the sign so that it will not fall down again, and I will glue it together. It's split, and I will glue it together, and I will repaint it also, and I'll do this at no cost to the city. It won't be done by tomorrow morning, but it's gonna take a little time. But,
It's nice of you to pick it up. I
I will
did
do
see
that.
that wind, with the heavy winds we had.
It did, and that's why I came down, I looked for evidence of vandalism, there's no evidence of vandalism or anybody hurting it or shooting it or anything like that. So I will repair it and it will be back up.
Somebody was asking me what happened to the sign, I thought maybe the city guys took it down and fixed it.
Oh, it fell.
Well, we had a horrendous wind out there,
That's-
and, fact is, I know one of my neighbors, his flagpole bent over. When was it, a couple weeks ago? Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. And that's
If there's nothing else, does someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
so moved.
I will second that. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.